Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again for many of you to the Baker Institute at Rice University. We are particularly pleased to have our honored guest with us today, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Danny Ayalon, who will be speaking to us in just a moment. There could not be a more propitious time for a presentation by the Israeli ambassador. The Middle East is so much in today's news, from the Arab-Israeli equation to the Gulf and Iraq to Afghanistan, and even when you go further to India, Pakistan, and Kashmir. Indeed, these are very important times. They are truly dangerous times. And of course, it is the task of diplomacy of all the nations involved to seek the settlements and the solutions to the very pressing problems of the day. The ambassador has very generously agreed to take questions and answers, which I will feel there'll be written questions and answers. So if you could give those to the Rice ambassadors as they'll just hold them up and they'll come and get them, and then we will try to get as many questions as possible. Daniel Ayalon, the ambassador of the State of Israel, assumed the post in July of 2002, so he is relatively new. He has played an instrumental role in Israel's foreign policy during the last 3 consecutive Israeli administrations, and prior to his appointment as ambassador to the United States, he was the foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. In fact, I remember when I met with Prime Minister Sharon last year, I saw this young man next to me, and I said, "Who is this young guy?" And then I looked, I said, "Oh my God, it's Ayalon." And he has risen very quickly. He's a career diplomat in the Israeli service. He was the Deputy Foreign Policy Advisor to former Prime Ministers Ehud Barak and Benjamin Netanyahu. So he is obviously a man who navigates between the various and complex political spectrum of Israel. And he was a member of the Israeli delegations to the talks at Sharm el-Sheikh in 1997, the Y Plantation in 1998, and the Camp David Summit in 2000. So he is extremely well versed in the substance of the Arab-Israeli negotiations. He served in New York as the director of the Bureau of Israel's ambassador to the UN. He's been involved in work with peacekeeping operations and the UN Development Fund. He is a native of Tel Aviv, a graduate of Tel Aviv University's economics department, and holds an MBA from the University of Bowling Green in Ohio. We're very happy that his wife Ann is here with him in Houston. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to the Ambassador of Israel, Daniel Ayalon.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Ambassador Jeredjian, it was really very kind of you to have this introduction. I really appreciate it. And when Ambassador Jeredjian mentioned my political acumen and rising and working for different administrations, he was my role model. I think you're the only American ambassador who served both in Damascus and in Israel. So we really appreciated all your work there. And as Ed mentioned, lastly we met in Jerusalem, and we still appreciate very much the involvement of Ambassador Jeredjian, of his very good work at this institute, which really is invaluable in educating the public in America about the complexities of foreign affairs issues, and especially in the Middle East. And if I can clarify a little bit for you what is happening now in our corner of the world, that will be my privilege today. And I look forward to your questions, and I'll try to be brief. If there is one message that really I want to parlay here today, is that Israel wants peace. And I cannot say this strongly enough. Peace is not just a vague word. It brings prosperity, it brings investment for development in infrastructure, industry, and education. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and our national unity government are absolutely and fully committed to achieving peace. Once there is an end to all violence and terror against the Israeli people, and we have a partner who is honest, reliable, and committed to living in coexistence with us, then we will succeed. It is not only a strategic option for us, it is a moral choice. Some people ask me, how can there be peace? Jews and Arabs have never lived together peacefully. Well, this is not true. Israel and Arab coexistence throughout centuries. Muslims and Jews lived together throughout the Middle East. And the unrest today is the simple result of an unfaithful Palestinian leadership that has actively aided, supported, financed, and promoted violence and terrorism. You know, we lived together for centuries in the Middle East. In Israel, we are 6.5 million people. 1 million are Arab citizens, Muslims, Christians, Druze, others, with full rights and representation in our Knessets. Full rights and equal opportunities. They are loyal Israelis. We did resolve our conflicts with Jordan and with Egypt because their leaders were honest in working with us towards peace. They showed a sincere willingness to stop the terror and hatred, and we responded by making extraordinary concessions. We gave back land to Egypt with oil, water, infrastructure, and roads. We made significant political and economic agreements with Jordan, and we have peace on our borders. A secure Middle East is in the best interest of everybody. Now, the Palestinian leadership has had more than enough time to establish themselves as credible partners for peace. But time and again, they reject peace and deliberately choose to support violence, hatred, and incitement. Palestinian intelligence and security forces has all the information and power needed, even now as we speak, to arrest terrorists, confiscate weapons, stop attacks on Israeli citizens, and dismantle the terrorist infrastructures. But they refuse. This week, a Palestinian general, Muhammad Masri, said publicly that Palestinian Authority has the military resources to fully crush Hamas terrorist operations, but lack the political will. He said the long-awaited crackdown on Hamas will likely never happen. Well, we say that they have a choice. Fight Hamas and move on to the path of peace, or continue to wage war against Israel. Until then, we must prevent the attacks ourselves. This is our right and responsibility to defend our people. When Prime Minister Sharon first took office, he spoke with Arafat on the telephone twice. He pledged to him that if Arafat would concentrate on restraining terror in specific zones, if it was too hard for him to control all the area at once, every zone, one at a time, Israel would help him. This didn't happen because Arafat was uninterested in using his power to create calm. Instead, he was fomenting violence. Spinoza, the great philosopher of the Middle Ages, said that, I quote, "Peace is not an absence of war, it is a virtue, a state of mind, a disposition for benevolence." But we see that the Palestinian leadership's state of mind is not one of peace, not yet. This goes back much earlier than Camp David. In 1994, after the Oslo signing, when Arafat and his Palestinian Authority came from Tunisia to the West Bank and Gaza, money poured in from Europe, the United States, Arab countries, and Israel gave money too. But they did not adopt the plan to promote peace and coexistence. They did not develop infrastructure or forge new industries. They did not create social and welfare programs. They did not change the hateful rhetoric taught in textbooks in Palestinian schools. They did not come to build a nation. They came to destroy ours. This is not a cycle of violence, as some may like to call it. We are defending ourselves as they continue to plan and perpetrate attacks on us. We've tried on endless numbers of ceasefires. We gave them a chance just last month with the Gaza and Bethlehem plan. Again, we saw a deliberate refusal to stop attacks on us. Just today, we had another suicide attempt, 1 Israeli killed, more than 20 injured. The Palestinian Authority said that the Israelis would cave in within 6 months. We have it all documented now. That they could break our spirit and make us surrender. That violence will pay. They were wrong. We have remained steadfast and resilient. We are a strong nation and continue to build ourselves, even under these difficult times. Those who seek to delegitimize Israel make this conflict an issue of human rights. This is not the case. Before this campaign of violence, 99% of the Palestinian population has been under the full control of the Palestinian Authority. Yet not a single refugee camp has been rehabilitated in spite of the billions of dollars the Palestinian Authority received. They have kept their brethren in oppressive conditions, allowing their people's frustration to boil. They indoctrinated them with hate and religious fanaticism, and they armed them. This is what we face now. It's no wonder that much of the terror comes from these camps. However, our war is not with the Palestinian people. In Israel, we are increasing work permits, and medical and humanitarian aid is being sent through to help alleviate the conditions of the ordinary Palestinians. Before this campaign of terror, over 120,000 Palestinians were working in Israel, supporting more than 1 million of the populations. That's more than a third. Business and trade between Israel and the Palestinians was at all-time high, and their unemployment rate was low. Before the Palestinian Authority was given control in 1994, the gross domestic product of the West Bank was around $3,500, one of the highest in the Arab world, higher than our neighbors in Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. Under the Palestinian Authority rule, their people's income fell dramatically. This is the fault of the current leadership. Fundamental reforms are needed in several areas to bring about a new system of governance, one that is serious about fighting terror, establishing an open and effective system of government, and promoting peace. The ordinary Palestinian has long awaited for these reforms, but has been silenced by the undemocratic leadership. They must let voices of reason be heard. Nabil Amr, a former Palestinian Authority cabinet minister, published an open letter to Yasser Arafat restating the need for reform. In the letter he says, and I quote, "We gave up the establishment of institutions worthy of the world's support and of the Palestinians' trust. What did we do with the Legislative Council?" he asks. What did we do with the judiciary? What did we do with the money? And what did we do with the administration? This candid letter seemed to speak to the heart of the Palestinian Authority's problems. But what happened to this Nabil Amr? 2 weeks later, masked Palestinian gunmen loyal to Arafat tried to kill him in his home in Ramallah. It is clear, under the current Palestinian leadership, progress is defeated by the regime's oppressive hand. Now, there is no other way forward but for genuine transformations to be made by the Palestinian leadership. The divergent Palestinian security services, now effectively terror services, must be unified in order to construct a central command that effectively fights terrorism. A democratic representative political structure must be implemented that would truly embody the interests of the people of the West Bank and Gaza, allowing for political freedoms. Power cannot only rest in the hands of one authoritarian ruler. Financial transparency is needed for the rebuilding of Palestinian society. There must be an end to corruption so that international funds for the Palestinians no longer line the pockets of corrupt officials or is spent financing terrorist cells. And finally, the implementation of a truly independent judiciary will ensure that justice is fair and not merely a function of the dictator's desire. We fully support President Bush's historic vision for the Middle East laid out in his June 24th speech, which gave a clear roadmap for resumption of negotiations dependent upon a new Palestinian leadership that can act against terrorism. Now, we have proven that terror can be fought. It's not a plague or God-given. By using a combination of measures, terror can be brought down substantially. The United States has helped so much in this bringing down the terror by providing the moral clarity, the wisdom, and the courage and determination. It requires all of this. The strength of Israel is our people and the courage we have to carry on. The value we place on human life and dignity is what sustains our great democracy, and we cherish and we will preserve it. I want to thank you all for inviting me here. Again, Ambassador Jerejian, it's really a pleasure. I'm optimistic for the future, and so are most of Israelis. Thank you.
There are many questions, Mr. Ambassador. First, you spoke about reforms of the Palestinian Authority. Do you think it's possible that the Palestinians would establish a parliamentary democracy akin to the system in Israel, where you have a president who is more honorific and a prime minister who's the chief executive, and that prime minister would be the key interlocutor for Israel, and perhaps Arafat would be the honorary president?
In short, yes, I think this is achievable. It's not going to be easy, and it may be a very bumpy road, but we see a beginning. And for the first time in history of the Palestinians, we see there is a beginning of a soul-searching within the Palestinian society. For the first time, they second-guess their own leadership, doing soul-searching. Many ask whether this leadership has best served their national interests. And when I gave you these compliments, the Baker Institutes here at the Rice University, we are subscribed to your position papers, and they are very important, and we read them, and many decision makers in Israel and throughout the region read them, and the last one that you did on the Arab-Israeli peace negotiations was, I think, August 2002, number 19, I have it here, and you have it here pretty much laid out, and many of the things I can really vouch for and agree to. When you talk about a conceptual format for solution, political solution, you say 242-338, the UN Security Council resolutions, principle of land for peace, Madrid, Bush speech of June 24th. We are all for it. When you talk about the diplomatic challenge, one of the most challenging and the make or break would be what you call real efforts against terrorism, which would be more realistic yardstick than total end of terror. That means specific benchmarks. We had General Zinni, the emissary of the Secretary of State in our country. Unfortunately, his missions was not be able to be carried through because of terror attacks every time he came. But he was the first one to delineate specific benchmarks. It's not enough for them to say, well, we are against terror. Well, first of all, show us what you do, and we will tell you what you need to do. For instance, make arrests. And they do know who to arrest. We have given them all the information. Confiscate illegal weapons. Dismantle the infrastructure. And here, there is no coexistence with Hamas. You cannot really achieve ceasefire with them because it's going to be a mere tactical respite for them to regroup and then attack at will. This is something that General Zinni very well understood, and he laid a whole blueprint for the Palestinians to do. Also, he laid some things for us to do. Now, we accepted everything. The Palestinians didn't. And the day we gave our affirmative answer, and I remember it very vividly because I was still then the foreign policy advisor to Sharon. It was on the eve of the Passover. And it was Aaron Miller, I'm sure you know him, right, who was with General Zinni, who called me. And he said, how late are you prepared to do a press conference that Sharon would come and say, okay, it's a deal. We said, even though it was an eve of the Passover, he was willing to go as late as possible. He said, okay, wait for a call, because he was going to see Arafat. Then the call never came, because that was another missed opportunity. The short answer is yes, but I really wanted to take the opportunity and mention your papers, which we
Thank you. We appreciate the public relations aspect.
Well, I want to come again, you see. So.
Is Prime Minister Sharon truly willing to accept 100% effort on the part of the Palestinian Authority to clamp down on terrorism and violence, in contrast to 100% results? In other words, the effort.
Yes. Again,
results.
Right. When Sharon was first elected, we really thought that the results should be the yardstick, because this is what is all for the Israeli mothers and fathers and people. They want to live in peace. So if there are casualties, if there is terror, how can you make peace? But we realized that it was not very realistic to look for 100% results. So we did change our demand to 100% effort. But 100% effort, just as I mentioned, and this is what General Zinni understood, the 100% effort is not something esoteric, something abstract. It has to be spelled out. And he did spell out steps that they should take. Like I mentioned, do the arrests, confiscate, dismantle infrastructure, stop the incitement, and do a consistent and effective counterterrorism. And once they do all this, once they take responsibility, security responsibility, we are out of all these areas and we are ready to negotiate.
To what extent do you really think Arafat can control Hamas or the other terrorist groups? And do you think that his successor would be able to do so?
Well, I'd rather talk about the Palestinian leadership and not Arafat, because he really rendered himself irrelevant, and we want to be consistent with that, despite of what happened in Ramallah 2 weeks ago. And if there are any questions, I can explain exactly what happened there. Yes, when they came, when the Palestinian Authority arrived from Tunisia to the territories there, Arafat brought with him more than 100,000 of his people. He was allowed, according to the Oslo agreements, a security forces of 30,000 strong people with well-armed. It came, by increasing development up to 60,000. Who is Hamas? Hamas, there are a few hundred terrorists with arms. Jihad has even less. So if there was a concentrated campaign, he could have rounded them up, if not in one night, in 2 nights. The problem is that they lacked the political will to do that. And this is a clear choice for them. I believe it's not up to me to say, from the Palestinian perspective, but if they really want to become a nation, a viable country, they cannot allow more than one army. Right now, they have all these different terror organizations, and if they do not fight them, we will have to do that. So this is very clear. Yes, they do have the power to do it, they just lack the political will.
Is it your opinion that for peace to occur that the settlements must be given up in the West Bank and Gaza?
Well, I wouldn't really discuss it. I can just give a very startling example. My simple answer would be no, the settlement are not the issue. And we have the proof. The PLO, as a terrorist organization, was formed in 1964 with a specific aim of destruction of Israel. That was well before any settlement was there. From 1948 to 1967, the territories, this West Bank and Gaza, was under Egyptian or Palestinian territory. Was there any movement for peace there? No, terror was there, as it is now. But the most striking fact is that in 2000, July 2000, Camp David, Prime Minister Barak of Israel was willing to give up everything. And still, there was no acceptance on the other side. They didn't accept the deal. Not only that, they didn't even have a counter proposal to President Clinton's deal. So if you ask me, the real problem right now is still the unacceptance of the Palestinians of our right, our birthright right to our homeland. This is the main problem. And once we have a leadership that is really committed to peace and effective in fighting terror, I don't believe that this will be the problem.
We have many questions here on the settlements, but generically, the basic thrust of all these questions is Israel, in a framework of a comprehensive peace agreement, willing to dismantle the settlements for true peace?
Well, I wouldn't go into it because, negotiations should be done directly around the table and without any preconditions. When people were celebrating the Saudi initiative, we thought there were positive things about it. The first time that Saudi Arabia, which is the most maybe conservative country of all the Arab world, talked freely and publicly about a vision of peace. They even were very vague, and that was very interesting, vague in the contours, in the outlines of the solution, because you leave it for the negotiations. What happened was that when it was brought to the Arab League in Beirut last March, it was watered down. And again, the Arab Summit came up with a resolution of a fixed solution, 4th of June borders, no settlements, right of return for the refugees, Jerusalem. This is a dictate. What we say is negotiations are give and take. They're not take it or leave it. Now, granted, we do believe, and I firmly believe, in the Palestinians' legitimate rights, political rights, human rights, economical, what have you, as I expect them to believe in my rights, in Israeli rights. And I don't think there is any people in the world that, in history, that voluntarily gave up parts of his homeland. Now again, I'm saying that we are looking for a practical solution. But what we expect from the Palestinians is that as they expect us for compromise, they should be prepared to do that as well. And, in history, in the evolution of peoples, there are dreams and visions which are idyllic. I don't expect the Palestinians to shirk their dreams and hopes, as I don't expect them to expect us to do that. The role of leadership is exactly this, is to bridge the gap between this vision, these maximalistic demands, and reality. We are prepared to do that. We have not seen this leadership, the Palestinian leadership, educating their people for coexistence. So this is really what we see as the problem.
Mr. Ambassador, you've spoken about Palestinian violence and terrorism, but there are also accusations that Israel is operating with excessive force against the Palestinian Authority. How do you explain this?
Well, again, I think that the right for self-defense must be preserved. Democracies must defend themselves. Now, again, it's not an ideal world. And one of the dilemmas that we have is that the Palestinian terrorists deliberately are situated in densely populated areas. They use population as human shields. Now, we are trying very hard to distinguish between the terrorists and the population at large. Sometimes, unfortunately, mistakes occur. I mean, look what happened in Afghanistan. Clearly, nobody wants to hurt civilians. But the notion of a cycle of violence or Israel using force, it's just not true. Because we have to set the record straight. We were embarked on a peaceful road. And then what happened? The terror began. And it's not an intifada, which suggests popular uprising. This is a well-orchestrated campaign of terror, top down, very well planned. And it wasn't planned just after Camp David broke down. It was prepared years before. And again, we see how they geared themselves, how they smuggled all the arms, how they prepared their security forces to become terrorists. This is the problem. Now, when there are civilian casualties, we regret it, and we are very, very sorry for it. But can we take responsibility for it? I don't think so. Because if terror stopped today, we will not be in this territory. And again, you have to see it's a cause and effect. It's not that we went into these towns and the terror began. It was exactly the opposite. Because the terror started, and we waited as long as possible. And I can tell you that from my perspective in Jerusalem. We have waited and waited. More than 600 casualties, Israeli citizens that died, more than 3,000 injured, before we launched this Operation Defensive Shield in March. Last March was the bloodiest March of this terror period. 131 Israelis in 1 month were killed, 600 injured. Only then we moved in. And we see that there are results from an average of 1 or 2 suicide bombing a day. We went down to 1 every 4 weeks. Is it acceptable? No. But at least it's sustainable. And you see that there is no substitute to presence there. And why are we there? Because of the inaction of the Palestinians. Not only they do not stop the terror, but they encourage it. And we see a coalition of terror against us. It's not just Hamas or Jihad. It's Tanzim, it's Fatah, Arafat's own organizations, the PA security forces. This is the problem. So the excessive force, the term is excessive terror. You know, what we face in Israel is really we have been a testing ground. I say it unfortunately, in the Middle East, testing ground for decades now for new war techniques and army and weapon technology, whether in the 50s, in the 60s. First it was armor, then Air Force, then electronic warfare. Now it's a new type of war. It's a terror war, and a new type of terror, which is suicide bombing. I call it unconventional type of terror, which calls for unconventional means of defense. And the suicide terror is very dangerous on 2 accounts. First of all, the devastating effects of it, and secondly, it is so easy to do and so easy to be copied. And again, as we are testing ground, if we are not stopping it there, if we do not prove that this terror cannot win, that there are solutions to it, and there are, then it could be rampant all over the world. And that's why it's so important, I think, for the international community to put the focus and onus where it should be, on the Palestinians, to stop the terror.
Since the collapse of the Camp David talks and Taba, in which you were involved, there is obviously great frustration amongst the Palestinians and a loss of hope, but also a loss of hope within the Israeli public opinion. How deep is this loss of hope by the Israelis? Has it become one that the prospects for peace are no longer believed amongst Israelis?
No, I don't think so. Before this campaign of terror, more than 75% of Israelis were for political solution. By the way, Prime Minister Sharon, after taking office, I think he was the first Likud Prime Minister who openly talked about 2-state solutions. I don't think we have lost hope. We have been more determined to fight terror since, that's for sure. We are hurting, we are in deep pain, but we are resolved to fight the terror, to win this war on terror. Terror will not pay, violence will not give any rewards, because otherwise there is the order that we know of international stability and security will no longer be. And to the extent that this Palestinian leadership is there doing its own conduct, well, there's little hope that we can make progress. But we do have hope, and I do have hope, and I see signs of changes in the Palestinian Authority, in the leadership. And once we have a new regime there, like once we have a new regime in Iraq, which would be removing a great threat to international peace and security, then we can move ahead.
You've spoken about the Israeli-Palestinian crisis. There's, of course, Israel's the prospects of peace between Israel and Syria, Israel and Lebanon. There have been incidents on the Lebanese-Israeli border, the crisis over the Wazani Springs project, which raises the issue of water. How do you see the situation in the north, and what do you consider the prospects for peace eventually between Israel and Syria, Israel and Lebanon?
Thank you. The situation is tense, very gravely. And here, I didn't mention it in my examples, you know, when we made peace with Egypt and with Jordan. We left Lebanon unilaterally in May 2000. Well, there was a consensus among Israelis that we should leave. We fulfilled the 425, the UN resolution, UN Security Council resolution 425 to the letter and the spirit. We have full proof and a clean bill of health from Kofi Annan, the Secretary of the UN Secretary General. And then what? We hope to see a quiet border. We hope to see the Lebanese army deploy over on the border. But instead, we see the Hezbollah getting stronger. We see Syria aiding and supporting and equipping the Hezbollah with arms, Iranians' involvement, and now we have provocations where they try to shoot at us, killing soldiers, kidnap 3 soldiers, shooting at our airplanes who are flying over our own territory, airspace. And last but not least is trying to deviate the water of the Wazani River. The Wazani is one of the tributaries of Litani, which feeds also ultimately the Jordan River or the Lake of Galilee, which is the main and only reservoir of water that we have. Now, what they try to do now with the deviation is against all international agreements and regional agreements. And doing it unilaterally is a very grave situation, given the fact that Lebanon has per capita 5 times more water than Israel does. It's also not understandable. And especially as that they have another river, Litani, which goes right to the Mediterranean. Hundreds of millions of cubic meters just go down to the Mediterranean in vain with no use. We told them, why don't you use this water? Why do you have to use the water that feeds our lake? And it's a very serious issue. We also are very mindful of the sensitivity of this period when we see the global picture. And I could speculate that there are some who try to use it, maybe to rise the tension, maybe to frustrate the international focus on Iraq right now. We have shown a great deal of restraint. We don't want to change the situation there, and we rely here on American diplomacy. And you have sent some people over there to negotiate with the Lebanese and to explain to them the danger of what they're doing. I hope that they will be successful.
Are you concerned that American military action against Iraq could jeopardize stability in the Middle East? We have many questions along these lines. A corollary question is, don't you fear that Iraq would retaliate against Israel if it was attacked by the United States?
Yes, it's a clear danger for us. And although we say publicly and privately that we are not party to the conflict, Iraq is not an Israeli problem. Iraq is a problem for the international community at large, for the region, for its neighbors, and mainly to its own populations. But it's not up to us to discuss it. And again, there are those who try to bring us into it. We are not party to the decision-making. We are not saying one way or another what should be done. We keep a low profile. And the only thing we do say publicly is that Israel will remain a loyal ally to the United States, and we will support whatever course of action. Now, having said that, if I have to analyze the situation, and decision-making, I guess, in the national level is always between choices or alternative. And we don't have a situation here of clear, bad or good. We have bad and worse. And we know that Iraq, with its capabilities, with its know-how and expertise, 4 years without inspections, with its relentless effort to acquire nuclear capabilities, will be a much greater danger to us and to the region at large if there is not an effective disarmament of Iraq. I'm not saying how, but an effective disarmament and probably an effective regime change that could ensure that this disarmament is lasting. And if we attacked, all we say is that we will defend ourselves. That's all we can say, and no more.
If there is military action against Iraq and Saddam Hussein feels that his survival is at stake, and in an act of desperation, he launches his missiles with chemical or bacteriological weapons against Israel, and Israel retaliates, won't the situation then become more destabilizing in the Middle East as a whole?
Well, I'm not sure, because deterrence has always been the cornerstone of stability in the Middle East. And if deterrence is compromised, then again, you change the foundations. You really rock the foundations of the existing order. I hope this will not happen, and I really would not like to speculate on such things, but they should understand the gravity of, if a threshold is passed, which is a very dangerous one, of use of mass destruction weapons against any members of the international community. I think that the results to the perpetrators should be clear. And again, I wouldn't want to speculate here on that.
We have some missile experts in this audience. How will Israel's deployment of the Arrow missile defense system affect the position from which it would react to a military attack, and how it would negotiate with the rest of the Arab world?
The Arrow system.
The Arrow missile system.
Yeah, well, we have a full deployment of batteries there in Israel, which probably give a good sense of security. However, our analysts and strategists that don't like to work with any kind of margin of security would like to have more batteries deployed, but it probably gives a good coverage. Again, it has not been tested, fortunately, in real life. I was fortunate enough, I think, Ed, you were there too, in visiting the experiment of the Arrow missile, and it's has an outstanding performance. So unlike 91, we are much better equipped defensively. So again, it's not foolproof, but we must prepare. So we have it deployed, just ready. It's a defensive capability and not an offensive one, and we hope that it will not be used.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your answering all these questions. I would like to just try to end. I know these issues are so serious, but often I am asked, has American foreign policy evolved on the Arab-Israeli crisis? And I said, well, when I think back at the first statement made by Warren Austin in 1948 in the United Nations Security Council, when he made a plea to the international community, he said, why can't you Arabs and you Israelis make peace in a good Christian manner? I think we've come a long way since that time. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.